Final Fantasy 16, one of the most talked about and hyped games of the year, at least for me anyway, after years of turmoil, movie tie-ins and gachas. As Final Fantasy fans are finally eating good, all thanks to Square Enix and the Lord himself Naoki Yoshida. Also the people that are actually directing the game, Hiroshi Tanakai and Kazutoyo Mihiro. The game's marketing has even referenced this fact, such as in the announcement trailer ending with,
"The legacy of the crystals has shaped our history for long enough."
I wonder what that could be referencing. Now, as much as I believe Final Fantasy fans should be able to revel in actually having a feature-complete game for the first time in over a decade, I don't believe this game signals a new beginning of the franchise that some believe it to be. Now, just to preface, I enjoy this game, and it's a good game, but I don't think it's a masterpiece that most people are touting it as. Instead, I believe this game is a culmination of the negative design and marketing decisions that have plagued the series in recent titles, meaning that we might not be out of the storm yet, mates. To understand my critique on FF16, and how it relates to the greater series as a whole, a little context is required, mainly being the Fabula Nova Crystallis series, literally translating as the New Tale of the Crystal in Latin. This was an initiative within Square Enix to create a unified mythos that multiple Final Fantasy games could draw from. It was spearheaded by Kashiige Nojima, Shinji Hashimoto and Yoshinori Kitase, who would later go on to direct FF15. This initiative was seen as a failure, however, with each game following FF13 being received mixed to poorly by fans and critics. Unlike its spiritual predecessor, the compilation Final Fantasy VII, this initiative has led to a majority of the most recent FF games to either be reliant on a convoluted mythos such as FF13 and sequels, or having the development disrupted completely with its pivot away from the Fabula Nova Crystallis series, such as in the case of FF15. The only one to escape this fate with FF14, which had to be completely remade after its disastrous launch. Now, how does one relate this to FF16? Well, it's pretty simple. I believe despite Square Enix, by all purposes, shelving the Fabula Nova Crystallis series, its influence has permeated within the game design of Final Fantasy 16 itself, such as the barren open zones with hallway-like levels found also within Final Fantasy 13. So let's get into it. Firstly, and perhaps most importantly, this game is way too f***ing easy. This is perhaps the single biggest issue within the game, as it totally deflates the epic story moments when you're controlling these icons, if the opponents are too easy to beat. And yes, I know that there is a Final Fantasy difficulty in New Game Plus, but let's be honest, what we're talking about is at the first playthrough, perhaps the most important for the overall investment and enjoyment of the game. It's completely easy. Now, I'm not a great gamer, as anyone who raids with me on FF14 can attest, making you question, what the hell went wrong? This lack in difficulty is mainly not due to the combat system, which we will discuss later, but is more so the decision to forgo a traditional difficulty select in favour of equipable items that automate certain actions within the game. Now, this might seem fine at first, as I initially thought, but then you realise that the whole game is crippled by this design decision, as the base difficulty of the encounters is not raised to a high enough degree to warrant the use of such items. Now, you might be asking, why do this? Why would the initial difficulty be so low in the first place? Well, it's quite simple, really. Accessibility. Now, don't get me wrong, accessibility is important, such as what Naughty Dog has been doing in the recent games, adding stuff like colour correction for people that are hard of sight, for example, which allows gaming to become a more prolific medium, but also a more diverse one. The difference here is the sacrificial element of game design in return for a larger player base, essentially sacrificing the quality and challenge of the experience for the markability of the game as a whole. Now, you might think, how this relates to the whole series as a whole, really? But it's evident that since the early 2010s, Square Enix has constantly sacrificed the quality and even playability of their games in pursuit of a larger audience. Once you understand Square Enix's goal of attracting the largest market as possible for Final Fantasy, it starts to make sense why they would invest in the multimedia approach surrounding Final Fantasy 15, with them purposely cutting out integral sections of the story and featuring prominent Breaking Bad man Aaron Paul.
Yo, 148, 3 to the 3 to the 6 to the 9, representing the ABQ. What up, biatch? Leave it at the tone.
To be featured in the mediocre clusterfuck that is Kingsglaive. Now, even the old games aren't safe, with even Final Fantasy VII being subject to a trend-chasing battle royale for Soldier, which was quickly shut down after launch, showcasing Square Enix willingness to quickly jump on trends, regardless of its suitability to a franchise. The company and even the creative leads have admitted to the willingness to be swayed by the perceived trends of what's popular within the industry at the time, with Naoki Yoshida even saying that.
When creating FF16, you can't ignore the data that's been taken from the fan base from Final Fantasy 1 to 15. So again, creating a Final Fantasy, a numbered Final Fantasy, has become such an endeavor, to the point where your development costs can go upwards of $100 million just to create one game. And so to recoup that development cost, you need as many people playing your game as possible. And while a lot of the older fans are used to what Final Fantasy had in the past, a lot of younger players have never played a Final Fantasy game. They grew up playing first-person shooters. They grew up playing games like Grand Theft Auto, where basically you press a button and something happens immediately.
Obviously, action-based combat is a completely valid and time-tested gameplay system to base a game around, but Yoshida's comments imply that this was a decision taken to appear more modern, to attract a larger audience that would not ordinarily play a Final Fantasy game, rather than designing a system that suits the game itself. This dismissal of turn-based combat is strange, however, considering that one of Square's longest-running series, Dragon Quest, and their newest offerings, such as Bravely Default and Octopath Traveler, fully embrace this style of gameplay. Dragon Quest is a strange anomaly considering the current state of Final Fantasy, as despite being around longer than Final Fantasy itself, it has remained largely cohesive in terms of gameplay mechanics, featuring slight deviations such as the monster collecting mechanics, and I can't remember which one, but they never fully forgo turn-based combat, as Final Fantasy has continuously done. Despite this sticking to tradition, Dragon Quest has continued to be extremely popular for Square Enix, with Dragon Quest XI being incredibly popular in both Japan and overseas, making the argument that only games with action-focused combat being successful less believable. Hell, if you want another example, look at the Persona series, or even Like a Dragon, which I covered previously, which have either remained or shifted from action to turn-based combat, as is the case with Yakuza 7. As can be seen, Square Enix's attempts to gain a wider audience through the Fabula Nova Cristalla series and beyond have resulted in game design that is detrimented by the trends of the moment rather than a consideration of what suits the game best, as is clearly evident in their continued prioritisation of accessibility or the fundamental experience surrounding their games. From the semi-automated combat implemented from FF12 onwards, the multimedia strategy that fragmented the story of FF15, and the lack of true difficulty options that lessen the great combat of Final Fantasy 16, is evident that Square Enix still needs to learn how to embrace accessibility without sacrificing the design, cohesion and quality of their games. Well, that was quite wordy, so I think I'll end it there. Leave your thoughts on the current state of Final Fantasy or any other Square Enix series in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe and all that other shit. Litgam signing you off.